Hello, and welcome to Modern Metamorphoses, the podcast that takes a look at comics, prose, movies, TV shows, and other media involving the physical or mental alteration of its characters or metahuman themes. Striving to be insightful, respectful, and inclusive, this series will discuss adult material at times, but will itself be all access. Join us now as we look at how metamorphoses in media have evolved into the modern era. I am your co-host, Dan Standing, a transformation comics and prose creator.
And I am your fantasy researcher and scholar, Alex Fort.
I think I just need to be completely devoid of sleep to actually get my own introduction correct.
Somehow, you nailed it. And I was like in awe, and all right, I need to talk. What do I say? And I'm actually sleeping better than I have in months. And then you haven't slept at all, and you just nail it.
It's that leftover SizeCon intro confidence, because I nailed it for SizeCon, I believe, also. So
you did. You nailed it in front of a live studio audience.
Mm-hmm. But speaking of, it's actually been a little while outside of that hour-long special live SizeCon recording since we've done an episode recording. Is it not, Mr. Fort?
It has been a while. Before SizeCon, I think we didn't do anything for like a month.
I believe the last time we recorded a podcast episode was actually December. So we are a little ways into things here.
That's crazy.
Uh-huh. Now, part of that, actually, I'd say almost all of that is on me because for anybody who's listening who has not heard yet by the time this episode comes out, I am a new father. So life, we were in an adoption agency, and we learned on a Tuesday that a birth mother had selected us to adopt her premature baby girl, and on the following Wednesday we brought home a baby. So we had 8 days to do all of that, and this was at the start of February, and it's mid-March, and we're finally starting to get our handle on things. So but I
gotta give you respect. I can't even imagine what that's like.
It has been a journey, I will say, not without its difficulties, but I am thankful to have a partner as amazing as Amber. I had already dedicated myself to a number of projects for SizeCon when we then learned about it at the beginning of February that we'd been selected, and the first thing Amber said was it's going to be tough, but I'm going to make sure that you can still do what you need to do for SizeCon. So my many, many thanks to her and her support of me in this I don't even know how to describe this what I do. So,
this endeavor of the human condition.
This, as it's legally designated by my tax returns, side job. So
according to the W-2, this is work.
Yes, this is technically work. So
I am occupied. Mm-hmm. It is an occupation.
Mm-hmm. I have expenses. It is I do all the taxes myself because there are some things I'm like, and so what was this art commission for? Well,
smut, sir.
Yeah. I don't try and write off comic book purchases or things, even though I'm sure it's arguable. But yeah, so when it's so this mood boobs art that you've commissioned, how does that count as a business expense? I was like, I'm just going to do these
cover
taxes
art
myself.
It's for the album.
Yeah. So, anywho, some of you may know that we're supposed to be talking about the Island of Dr. Moreau for our next actual, Dan and Fort together podcast. However, because my brain is, in all other forms, kind of mush, and I'm not sure entirely how much I've really retained of the Island of Dr. Moreau, we're going to give it another go before I need to actually, speak academically on a thing. So
yeah, on a book with book things.
Yes,
and I'll gladly give you that space because I actually took notes in a book, and I'm I haven't done that in so long, and so I want you to be good and ready because I will just dive into it. But It's also like we had the realization it's been a year since we met.
Yeah.
It's been like a year like since we started the podcast.
Yeah, I think it's been a year since we started the podcast. We met in February. So, listening audience, in case you haven't figured it out yet, this is a little bit of a retrospective on
A reflection.
on the podcast so far. And so, as we kind of talk a little bit about a couple things here, we do want to hear from you. We want to know what's been working, what you've enjoyed of the podcast, what you want more of, what you would like us to do. Email us at modmetapodcast@gmail.com and, let us know. But in the meantime, we're going to do sort of the audio version of a flashback episode, if you will. Not really. This is not going to incorporate clips of other episodes because honestly, no offense.
That would be a lot of work. I'm not putting that on you, and I am not taking it up.
No, not only do I not want to do it, but it's rarely one of the episodes of anything that I want to listen to or watch. It's just not a thing that I like. So instead, we just kind of wanted to have a conversation about how we, feel like things are going, a little bit of history of our, friendship so far, and then a special surprise at the end of the episode.
Oh yes, I like surprises.
Well, you know what it is.
I may have forgotten.
I'll just say it now because I don't want to blow it up too much. But what did we do when we first met each other at SizeCon?
We gushed over our mutual passion for these kinds of things, and then I interviewed you.
You did. Our first ever audio recording together in the what was it, like the bar area of the
what's it, what city?
No, it was Pennsauken,
New Jersey.
not Pennsauken. No, it was crud.
Starts with the P. You got it.
Yeah, no, I know it's P. It's not Pennsauken. Pensauken's the town next to where I grew up in.
Piscataway.
Piscataway. Thank you. And what was it? Was it a Hyatt or
Oh no, it was like a family inn or something.
Anyway, yes, in Piscataway, New Jersey, my home state. By the way, New Jersey's my home state. I'll trash it as much as anybody else, but I do love New Jersey, and it was a lovely convention. I can't speak more highly of the last live convention I have been to since it was in early February of 2020. But
it was over Valentine's Day.
It was another reason why Amber is an amazing, amazing partner.
I gave up a Valentine's Day with my partner to go to a con that I'd heard about like 3 years prior during research, and it was. I still think very highly of that con.
Oh yeah,
and then on the flight back, I managed to catch bronchitis from something. And then, of course, 2 weeks later, we found out about like a lot of COVID stuff, and then we stopped doing anything with human beings.
Yeah,
for a year,
and more. But more. I loved SizeCon. I was very fortunate a number of years ago to be able, to go to. Amber and I were able to go to Fabletown and Beyond, which was the mythic fiction convention that was done in Rochester, not New York, the other Rochester, the one
in New Hampshire.
Nope, the one west of you. Even there's one that's west of you in
Missouri.
Yeah, maybe, I don't remember. But Fabletown and Beyond.
There's a lot west of me, bud.
I know there's a lot west of you. It wasn't. So we drove to it, so it wasn't too far more west of you. But it was Rochester something or other, and it was the like Fables, like the comic book Fables, and Pinocchio Vampire Hunter, and all that like myth and public domain fiction like adaptation convention. And it was also a small convention, and it is the reason why I can say that I've played pool volleyball with Gene Ha and Mark Buckingham, like these artists who are amazing while others watched. But anyway, so SizeCon was a fantastic little small convention that I think part of the enjoyment for me, and another reason why I really enjoy Joko Cruise, is that it was something that I think let people be their true selves in a safe place for the first time.
Oh, absolutely. I can't even begin to describe the atmosphere of like I feel like I don't know if we've talked about it. I know I've discussed it before with other people, but like there's something so refreshing about being in a mutual understanding with a large group of people where you understand like the different boundaries and like the expectations of things you can discuss and you can be open about with something like, because I researched the stigma around these ideas, and then to go into like a hotel and like everyone in the hotel, the staff, every guest, every person that stopped in, it's just like, yeah, no, we like boobs, we like bigger boobs, and they're gonna be as big as we want them, and like not a single blush. People are making jokes about it. It was like astounding.
Yeah, and I think when you listen to the interview that we have, I talk about how like I'm not someone who's ever had to be anything else other than me. Like I have that privilege. Like I 100% have that privilege. And so for me, it's just being in the environment, seeing and feeling the energy that everybody else has, being able to be that, to have a little bit of that privilege and that experience. It was just an amazingly accepting and chill and cool group to be at, whether it was in the dining hall or at the table, or in like I did the breast expansion social, and again, like Bust Artist and Predatorius and Sidrum and Tatus, like all these people, a Reducer, like all these people whom I had or hadn't heard of, like Rob Classack, like,
Yeah.
like, because for me, I had when I started this, I started it because, yeah, the genre interested me, but I found an ad that said, hey, we'll pay you to write this. And I've always been something of a writer and of, fantasy and the fantastic. And I was like, I feel like I could do this, and I feel like I could do it well. And I fell in love with the challenge of writing the, experience, to try and capture and describe an experience that's impossible to experience. That is one of the joys that I get out of this. I also talked about during SizeCon Micro this year about how also, I am fearful of, because I'm a big person. I'm 6'3". I would leave a wake behind me when I go places. I'm constantly terrified of accidentally doing some sort of injury or worse that can't be undone. It's a fear that I just have socially, and writing stories where people have things happen to them and ultimately figure out, oh, well, I can live with this, but it's actually made this particular aspect of my experience in this world better. Like, that's how I help myself process that fear. So, I started into this community in kind of a weird way. And then early on, I had a negative experience with a large size related group, and decided that I was just gonna hermit myself off, do my thing on my own website, and not really try and be part of anything bigger for a while. And then realized that was not a great plan after a number of years, and have been very, very thankful and appreciative that when I started to kind of come out of my shell, first on Tumblr, and then Tumblr died, and through Twitter and Discord, I've been welcomed particularly into the SizeCon size community, as well as a few others. So being there at SizeCon and meeting these people who had been so friendly and so welcoming and really made me feel good again about being in that kind of creative community was just an amazing experience. And, people like you, Mr. Fort.
I honestly, I'd say that's a good story. It's a very, like, I didn't realize that that's kind of like the timeline with which you like were in the community, receded from the community tentatively, and then just got accepted in again. Like the best way I can compare is like I usually go to like anime conventions. I usually go to like I've been to Gen Con a few times. Don't like that one. 50,000 people's too many people, especially now. But like the difference that I felt between going to like ASIN versus going to like SizeCon, not only was it like SizeCon was like 150 people in a hotel. It's like everyone got to, you passed the same people all in all. And I didn't realize you were 6'3" until you literally stood up, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
But it just like, because even if you go to like a smaller convention, like I go to like OhioCon, and that's, and like you go in there, like you don't really feel a camaraderie. Like maybe if you like One Piece, you're gonna find people, or if you like, you know, Bleach or whatever, but like you can never really tell from the outset. But like SizeCon was like the thing, because I'm not really involved in the community that much. I'm one of those lurker people. I like to see what people are up to, but I never really find a space in the conversation. Especially because it's like, oh, so what was your interest? It's like, well, I found out about these fetishes on 4chan, which was never good. And then I was like, huh, this is fascinating. What is this? And then I promptly didn't do anything with that for about 15 years. And then I went for my master's, and I was like, I can research this. I can make a thesis out of this. Let's look into this. And yeah, then that's when I really dug in and found out that there is a massive community online of all these people talking about impossible situations and portraying them in many different ways and many different flavors. And yeah, it's like, then I published that and just kind of rode those laurels for like 3 years. Like, I'm the guy who researched like the kinky stuff, that weird stuff on the internet, until then I went to SizeCon, and then it's like, oh, this is awesome. These people are cool. And not that I didn't think they were cool before, but like knowing them as human beings, besides, you know, just seeing like them just put stuff out on like DeviantArt, Tumblr, and then Tumblr imploded. It was kind of their fault. They know what they did.
Yeah, and that was on them.
Yeah, Yahoo ruined Tumblr because apparently the female nipple is a problem, and I don't get it.
Then they went around ruining Yahoo Groups, which was the other backup that I had been on for a long time. So,
Yahoo, you went from top to bottom over a long time. It actually took you a while to die, but you did it. Good job. But I kind of lost the focus point, but ultimately it came down to the fact that like I'm extremely happy that I met as many people as I did. Like, I was suited up. I wanted to wear my best, of course, naturally.
You looked very dapper, I will say.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. I can only hope that the next time we get to see each other in person, I'll look even more. But that was I think one of the first times at a convention I actually let myself be myself rather than being kind of guarded and quiet and just kind of cooperative. You know, like I can be boisterous when in like cosplay, but like at SizeCon, like there was the mutual understanding that everyone was on the same page. Everyone knows why they're there. We're all like, we may all be into different things, but ultimately it's all around the same thing, the impossible. And so it was extremely refreshing to be able to like go up to any table and to be like, hey, I'm Alex. I like what you're doing. And people will be like, cool, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm the guy who did the research. And they're like, oh, that's awesome. And then like, we're just friends. We're friends. I made like 10 friends in like 3 days. And then I started a podcast with one of them.
Yeah, I would say, you know, as I said, I've been to small cons and similar things, but I've never walked away from one where I can say with reliability that I'm going to speak to 5 to 10 of those people again within like the next couple weeks. Like between, you know, as I'm pretty much everybody who I listed off is somebody whom I've interacted with again online since SizeCon in significant ways that I never interacted with before SizeCon. And that's an incredible thing. I think I would say it's partially between the ease of communicating in Discord and Twitter now, but also just to say that, just the amiability and the wonderful ambiance of SizeCon helping people connect in a way that you might not at a different type of convention.
I mean, so I'm gonna fall back on the good old research that I did, because if I'm gonna write 50 pages of any academic text, I'm gonna cite it when I can. The beauty of online communities is that they are accessible, they are affordable, and that they are anonymous, usually. And so by virtue of just it's those three features, a lot of people who are in stigmatized groups love the online community because they can put themselves out there, and they, if you think about the different factors of like what makes a friendship and like the different kind of friendships you've had throughout your life, a lot of times it's like convenience. Like in high school, you have your high school friends, and then you graduate high school and you're not really friends with them. Like all you really had was like you were in the same place at the same time and you had like something in common. And then like later on in life, you find that it's more like people who you have similar personalities to, or even just like things that you have in common and like passion. Like it's never, as you get older, the convenience is less of a factor and more of just like you learn what you want out of things and out of people. And so with the people that we met at SizeCon, not only was there a lot in common thematically and also philosophy-wise, there's like just the energy in which that you associate with them and the ability to communicate them with them anytime you want. Like, of course they're going to be fast friends. Like, why wouldn't they? Like, the fact that we made as many friends as we did in a weekend, then, like, if I were to any of the other cons I mentioned, I've made one or two, and it's not even my fault. It's usually because, like, my partner knows these people from, like, Instagram, or, like, they met them and, like, at a panel, and then, like, hey, we get along. It's like, yeah, cool, great, I get along with you too. We can be friends. I feel like we had a different social idea, a social, like, approach, and we were much more open to it. And so now, yeah, it's like, it was networking without even trying. It was all kind. The things that you're supposed to do, but like it had the added benefit of like we got to bypass some of those layers of like the usual stigma behind what we do and what we like and what we are. We got to bypass all of that, and so the people that we met saw our true selves, and we got to be our true selves who were already ready to like them, as opposed to the usual case of you meet someone and then you slowly peel back the layers and like, the emotional intimacy and like the personal intimacy. Like I'm usually pretty guarded. It takes a long time for people to get to know me because I don't know what people want to know and I just kind of want to be agreeable. But like there, it was already just like we were like 3 steps happy. We had a head start on everything. And it makes me miss live events, but it also makes me miss very specific live events because I just, it's not only seeing the people again. It's not only just reunion. It's also the potential, like, because I've grown as a person in the past year. I've tried self-improvement through an involuntary hermitage, and I feel like I could just run in there and just like maybe like take chances that I normally take and learn. I'm like ready for that.
I got you. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just basically gonna just say like I don't want to say I'm ready to get my heart broken by like like making mistakes, but like I kind of am. I like this past year. I have to just I'm gonna, because we're gonna be talking about this. The past year, being able to do podcasts with you, and like it has been something that like when we were like going like interview after interview after interview, like we were doing like one every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Because we had a sudden surge of interest of people are like, yeah, I'd love to talk to you. And I'm like, I love talking. Let's do it. Just that, given we could not have foreseen the year we were going to have. And so I want to just go ahead and give you like a commendation and just kind of give you just a little bit of love, because I know you need it, of just thank you for, one, persisting, because we could have very easily dropped this. Like keeping on bringing like the good positive energy, giving like your all in every single time we do a recording, even when we're both kind of brain dead or we're just like, it's been a hell of a week and we're just working through it. It's been a really good year of committing to something that we do for fun. and I want to thank you for that. Not only the opportunity, but just your companionship and your friendship.
Well, thank you. That means quite a lot to me, very deeply. Once I decided that I wanted to do more and come into the community more, and in another life, I was a project manager at a company that's currently owned by SizeCon. For a very short amount of time, I was a project manager at SizeCon, or product manager at SizeCon. I've actually literally managed multi-million-dollar products.
Oh my!
Yeah, that they basically sold themselves. I'm not going to oversell my ability on this. Like I failed up into that. No, I'm very proud of the management that I did of them for the time that I was there. But I realized that these are skills that I could try and better apply to the size writing and everything. And I wanted to find different projects for that. So Modern Metamorphosis is the podcast idea that I had for some time before SizeCon. Like I'd gone through in my mind various ideas of how I wanted to do it or how it could be done. Early on, deciding that, as lovely and velvety as my voice is, one voice on a podcast, I didn't feel, particularly in a subject that has so many variations and differences and different reasons that people come to it for. One voice was certainly not appropriate for it. And I'd been kind of waiting. I've been like exploring and looking and thinking about, okay, who's somebody who I feel I trust and that I feel comes to this with the same openness and feeling of making it accessible and understanding that our voices are not the only voices that can come to the table, and but also an honest interest in why they are interested in it and having a viewpoint on that matter. And I struggled for finding somebody, and then I would say literally the moment you walked away from introducing yourself at the table at my table at SizeCon, I think I turned to Amber and was like, I need to talk to him about doing the podcast. And we interacted a little bit more throughout the convention, and then you were like, hey, you talked about whether or not you'd interviewed me before, and then when we established, figured out that you hadn't, I was like, oh yeah, let's figure out, how to do this. And so, I was like telling Amber, I'm like, oh yeah, so tomorrow morning I'm going to a stranger's hotel room to record a thing. And through various technical difficulties and things, we ended up using my actual recording software and Surface to record down in that hotel lobby, and we got to the end of it, and I think I was pretty much at that moment even trying to pitch you on, like, we should do more, like we should come back to this, because you very quickly made it clear the intelligent and warm and emotionally intelligent individual that you are. And I was a little scared to be like, hey, guy I've known for 48 hours, you want to do a podcast about this? And I didn't know whether or not you were going to agree to it. It was that's a big thing to dedicate, like, to truly dedicate yourself. Like, I've had many people, and even myself, who have come up with other podcast ideas, and podcast ideas can very easily blow through you into the wind.
A podcast is the new let's start a band.
Yeah, pretty much. And you said yes, and we each showed up at the time that we said, and we recorded professionally what we wanted to do, and we, did everything, and it was fun.
We started with mood boobs.
Again, a low-hanging fruit, but, a lot of low-hanging fruit make great pies. And I feel, did the baking, and we're very fortunate to have someone like Rolf Konevsky reach out to us. That certainly helped get things started.
That was in just the most fortuitous thing. I remember when you messaged me, did you get the email? Did you see the email? I'm like, I didn't. It's like, Rolf Konevsky reached out to us. He wants to talk to us. I was like, the Rolf? I mean, there's not two. There's no way there's two. It's such a unique name.
Yeah. I was like, oh, interesting. Okay, I guess this is a real thing now.
We hit it big, episode 2.
Yeah, which was just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. I just remembered I was that before I knew you, before I went to your table, I had managed to see the 2 YouTube videos you put out.
Oh yes, because that's right.
Modern Metamorphosis started as a show
on the long road of Modern Metamorphosis becoming a podcast. Yes, I started out with 2 YouTube videos. Video
one was Faust, right?
No, I didn't do Faust. I did The Collector. It was
The Collector. That's what it was.
And then I want to say, is it Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Star? Was the other one that I did. Both things I'd love us to do, new versions of on this. But The Collector's video, by the way, has 1,000 views on YouTube.
Really?
Those 2 videos, that video alone has had more watches and listens than all of our podcast episodes combined, which, as we checked earlier, is nearly 500 now. So thank you all for listening. But
I just remember, that got posted on Reddit, and I was like, this is interesting. Someone's digging into this. I like it. And then 2 years passed.
Yes, because 2 years passed after I made 2 episodes, because 1, I realized that video editing these things was far more complicated than I thought, and
my God,
2,
video editing sucks.
Yeah, and 2, I started getting copyright strikes, so I was like, all right, I need to actually, not on The Collector, but Twinkle Twinkle Lucky Star, copyright struck me. Yeah, I'm like, interesting, yeah. So I was like, I need to find a different way of doing this, and podcast was the idea that I thought of reinventing it, and then the rest is a little bit of history. Speaking of growing the podcast, by the way, we have a PO box now.
What?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
We have a P.O. box. So if anybody wants to send us anything, actually, J.R. Pars has already sent me a box of VHS tapes to kind of go through from his personal collection.
To add to the Transformium.
To add to the Transformium, yes. But certainly anything anybody wants to send us for any reason. It is here in Ohio. It's if you mail us at Modern Metamorphosis, P.O. Box 59, 33501 Lake Road, Suite B, in Avon Lake, Ohio, 44012-9998. And I'll try and put this up on the information feed. Yeah, the description. You can actually mail us this a P.O. box that I got literally 2 days before I found out that I was going to be an adopted father. And have been almost unable to check reliably since then. But I did.
So it sounds like people need to send you diapers.
I wouldn't turn them down.
No, you will not.
I will not turn down diapers. But but JR has so far been kind enough to send some stuff my way, and I'll be getting that organized and added to the Transformium. But yeah, so anyway, I don't want to have gotten too distracted. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for being an amazing co-host, being patient with me and sometimes my more random selections, and just being a good friend and someone who I genuinely look forward to talking with in general, let alone as part of this weird experiment. So thank you for your dedication and just kind of going with my weird vision, even in the beginning when it was very long and had multiple parts to it that I think thankfully we've trimmed a little.
I will Thank you. I really appreciate that. It means a lot, and it's things I like to hear that I need to hear in times like these. So I'm glad that we have a mutual understanding and respect of each other, and I look forward to much more. I look forward to just where we're going, because we have kind of changed the script a little, and so now it's more manageable. I think we've gotten better at it. Not to say the first one was awkward, but it's more like we're finding a good pace, and as we find more and more different hanging fruit, we can make different food. And I think, like now that we've been able to figure out books, I'm looking forward to actually reading, because I normally don't. Like, movies are easy. Movies are so easy. And at some point, I want to try to do like more of a thematic talking about like things in video games. I don't know if you play like a lot of video games.
Well, more, not as many as I used to, but there are many video games I know I've wanted to do as kind of like transformation themed, like YouTube or Twitch live stream, ranging either from like the Ovid's or no, not Ovid. Ovid's. No, hold on.
Kafka?
Nope.
The other one?
Inferno.
Dante?
That weird Dante's Inferno video game adaptation that came out a while ago.
Oh, yeah, the one that got all the big things wrong, all the small things right. I loved that game.
Oh, I love that game. It's got plenty of like the Cleopatra fight itself is interesting. Let's just say. But from things as big and mature as that down to like I love the Shantae video game series, and that's entirely about transformation. So
we should start doing that.
I stepped on you though. Yeah, what is it you were looking to do?
Oh, I was going to talk about like horror games, because those transformations I think have a lot of things we can talk about. At least just like one. I think we can do like one really good episode of just like different horror transformation tropes and what we like and dislike about them in regards to cause, process, and impact. Because like we can talk about like Halo, we can talk about Dead Space, we can talk about Resident Evil, we can talk about, there's like 8 of them now, we can talk about any of it. And I could my partner and I have had the same conversation like 5 times over the course of like 5 years about these things, and it's different every time.
I mean, honestly, video games are such a massive source of transformation themes. I mean, even Mario transforms. I've
started it.
And I have not yet had a chance to play. I've got the Super Mario or Mario 3D World / Bowser's Fury. That's downloaded onto my Switch pretty much the day we brought home our baby. So it has not gotten touched yet, but there's lots of forms. Again, transformation is a part of our modern media that is so deep in it that people don't even realize it, that they're seeing it. Like you go from Mini Mario to Big Mario, or Toadette to Peachette, and that's a transformation. Bowser to Meowser, like.
I mean, we often overlook the fact that the first inflation in video games was Dig Dug.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I inflated a lot of dragons in Dig Dug.
And I remember playing Dig Dug, and I was like, this is weird. And then I grew up, and then I did research, and I was like, wait, this is weird.
Yeah, it's a deep thing to go in. I'd love to do that. I also like, as I mentioned, we did things like, the early on when I would like pick a comic book from the Transformium and do, or the book club, like
the
things
book club.
Things that I've wanted to. I haven't finished Model Land yet, but I'd love to get back to that on a as far as a streaming option is concerned, like something that's a little bit more visual. I've also talked to Tatus. Tatus has a very good history and collection of size stuff through magazines and comics, and I've talked to him also about like maybe doing a combined collection sort of like dual live stream, because again I've been alone from this community for so long. I almost crave like doing those things with people. I suck when it comes to like writing collaboratives. Like I would love to do more of like the producer and the assistant's shared universe, but I've so much dedicated in what I need to, do for my patrons in Patreon, that I find that sort of work, I always am like, oh man, I want to do more for this, but I just find myself, because it's Caliph Industries that producer and assistant do. I'd love to be more involved in that. I've got so many of my own writing projects I can't, but for some reason I think I can find time to do more streaming projects.
Streaming is a much, much smaller like dedication, because you can sit there and just like 3 hours one day, and you can like engage with people on the chat. Like, that's the best place for a book club. Yeah, you could just discuss your favorite things, and then if there's anyone watching, they could just join in, as opposed to like a retrospective, like, I read this thing and here's me talking about it for 20 minutes, and hopefully someone joins in the comment section, then we can talk about it later. It's really hard to fuel the conversation when you are the conversation.
Very, very true. But yeah, I'd love to do more things like that, expanding out our exploration of transformation in media. And for those of you who are listening, let us know what your thoughts are on our, like, how we've done some of our guest episodes. We've switched back and forth. Like with Rolf and JR, it was more of a like retrospective on their careers and the things of it that are sizey.
It was a personal interview.
Yeah. But we've also done things with like the producer and the assistant and Rob Classack and Tatus and Sidram, where it's been, bring your favorite genre item,
show and tell.
Yeah, and we'll all discuss it. And I'm hoping I didn't forget anybody there, because I've loved all of our interviews. But I know Predatorius wants to do something with us. Astra Ebenwing has expressed some interest. The Goddess Clue. I know the producer wants to come back and do another one. I think the assistant as well. So, we've got a lot of interest for more of those. And then, of course, I love just sitting here, the two of us, and tackling subjects. Like, there's certainly more things that I want to do with you. So, we want to hear from people. What are you interested in? What have you enjoyed? What have you liked? What would you like to maybe see us bring back or do in a different way? Like, this is about you, honestly. Like,
yeah, we do this for us because it's fun, but we also do it because we find the need to share.
Yeah. And again, like, this is the fun thing we do for fun. Like, I've literally turned down, we actually did get emailed about joining one of those like advertising, like, collectives or whatever. I don't know if you've seen any emails in there or not.
I saw the one where it's like, hey, I saw your profile on this and I was wondering if you're interested in an opportunity. And I was like, no.
Yeah, no. Like, from the very beginning, we've talked about how, like, this is a podcast for the transformation community. I want to thank Tatus for being our first sponsor so much. And, we want to make this available for you. If you don't, that's fine. I'm not here to make a buck on this.
Yeah, I think
that's what the Patreon's
for.
About
it. I think, actually, that's one of the things I really respect about this kind of relationship we have, is the fact that, like, you and I have reminded each other that this is not about the money. We don't need this to get by. We both have our own careers and our own ambitions and passions and all that stuff. And this is one of the passions. So, like, you're like, oh man, I'm sorry. I don't know if I can make the recording tonight. And you're like, hey, guess what? We don't have to. We can reschedule because we're doing this for fun. So if you're really worried, we can do it. Because, like, again, as we preface the episode, we would be talking about the island of Dr. Moreau, but newborn babies eat brain cells for fun and sleep is a joke. So we don't have to do it.
Yeah.
We're doing this because we want to. Because if we didn't have anything back up, right? If we didn't even think about doing a retrospective, we just wouldn't. And that sounds kind of like cold, because it's like, well, we want to do things for you, but like that means that we want to do things we want to do for you, as opposed to we do things out of obligation so you get what we give you. And if you don't have the passion in the project, it's just, what's the point?
Exactly. And I appreciate that flexibility in you, because I don't like saying, like, hey, make sure you got your Tuesday night free and then canceling on you. So that's my just general politeness obligation to you. But yeah, we're not doing this because some mattress company has been like, hey, you got to get an episode out within 2 weeks that talks about who we are. Like, no.
If a mattress company wanted to tie themselves to our brand, transform your sleep.
Have you been on a particularly great 4chan chain and seen some images that have made you a little interested in the nighttime activities? Our mattress is very soft and won't squeak.
Springs are for losers.
Yeah. Yeah.
You'll never forget this memory foam. And you know what? I'm not even going to give them any free anything.
No.
I just like making jokes. It's voice acting jokes.
And, I'm glad that they support podcasts, other, but anywho, that's not for us though. That's not why we're here. So
yeah, brought to you by Raycon.
Yeah. Brought to you by Audacity. It's free. We use it.
Yeah, seriously. Audacity is amazing. I use it for voice acting too. It's actually a really good program.
I literally could not do this without Audacity.
Yeah, I even use it to record my commentary for like educational videos I do for work. It's good.
I've also used this to do PSAs for Amber's work. So yeah, it's a great program. Go support Audacity.
It's free, and so they're not paying us. Brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends.
So anyway, is there anything else that you wanted to touch on? Any let's do something transforming. What's your favorite transformation thing we've talked about on the podcast so far?
Okay. So of all the things that we've spoken about, we have talked about starting off with the breast expansion movie, and then we went to Mortal Kombat with all of that fun stuff. Then there's shrinking, and then there's turning into bugs, and then there's vampires, and then there was Miss Madam Mim, Mary Madam Mim,
Mad Madam Mim,
Mad Madam Mim. It's that fun alliteration. And then we talked about the Adventure Zone. Of all the ones that we spoke about, I think actually the one that sticks the most in my head is still Help I Shrunk My Teacher.
Oh yes,
because it was just. I actually wrote down, we have a shared Google Doc that we were debating, making excerpts and putting them out in writing. And so I was writing on them, and the Moo Boobs one has a lot of things to talk about because it goes into the background of why I did the research, which is I personally believe that every person has some kind of fascination or fixation in their brain. We are predisposed to something, and it doesn't have to be natural. Because the way that the fantasy fetish kink works out is that it's impossible. So it's not over the course of generations, someone experienced a thing, and so it gets hardwired. We have this kind of biological idea, philosophy in our society that everything has a natural reason. And then you look at many people or hypersized things or whatever, and that it doesn't really make a lot of sense biologically, but we still have it, and people don't really choose it. So where does it come from? And so I wrote about that, and then I got down to Help I Shrunk My Teacher, and it's just so maybe it comes from media because there's somebody who decided to put a really, really big pee scene in a movie, and we don't know why. There's the thread of her getting stepped on, her getting covered in food. All these things seem like innocent ideas, but they stick in people's brains somewhere. And the why is not nearly as important as the it is. It just happens. Because, we could try to break down why all the time. Why do some people get traumatized by some events and others not, despite being in similar circumstances? But that's not important. What's important is what you do with it. And so, just our entire discussion of Help I Shrunk My Teacher is this, basically us, doing that, side-eye look at, a German film, writer and director and props team and special effects crew. And we're just kind of we know you're up to something.
Nobody does this with this much care and detail without something.
Because they put so much effort into it while also trying to make it seem super innocent. This is some Spy Kids level, naivety. But we know because there's too much coincidence with all these different things together. And then there's a sequel, right?
There's actually a trilogy now, I believe.
Oh no,
I haven't gotten a hold of the third one yet. I'm sitting on the DVD for the second one, though. We will be getting to that.
don't sit too hard. It might like it.
Oh yeah, right. That's a different thing.
Yes, but the premise is that, yeah, of all the things I wrote down, the one thing I wrote for Help I Shrunk My Teacher is like, remember what we were talking about earlier with the secret implanting of erotic themes in the generally digested media? Yeah, this.
Yeah, a lot of this.
Yeah.
I think
what was yours?
I think there was some deep catharsis that I got out of our episode with the assistant for Interview with the Vampire.
Oh yeah,
just our realization of deeper character judgments in it, and just being able to freely kind of explore one of the oldest transformation things in literature. Not the oldest, because salt petrification and other things happened.
Oh yeah, the Bible. There were books before the Bible, right?
Well, also Greek mythology and most other, I'm sure
Egyptian mythology,
Asian mythology,
yeah. But like when we talk about like general Western culture, like the Bible's got a lot of transformation in it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But vampires, as far as a like broad cultural thing is concerned, just being able to kind of lean into that and pick at it, I feel like I've really enjoyed that exploration of like why vampires are sexy and what they do, and then just really, really hating on a former slave owner. That was
so good.
But
I'm all for that.
Yeah, I feel like that's honestly when people whom so one of the things, I mean, just touch on this. One of the things that kind of came from SizeCon was me, Amber had known since before we were married that, this was something that I write about and have interests in. But, as far as like my parents, family members, other friends, like it wasn't something that was discussed much, but SizeCon, it was like, where are you going for this weekend? Cause I'm in Ohio. So going to New Jersey was not a thing we could do without people asking, hey, what are you doing in New Jersey? Because I also still know people in New Jersey. Was me finally just like, yeah, I'm going to a size convention. I write things under a different, under a name, this is a thing that I do. I've been doing it for years. I enjoy it. Oh crud, baby brain. I've lost where I was going with all of this. But yes, so when friends of mine or family members, even including my own mother, are like, "Hey, I know you're doing this podcast about this. Is it something I would enjoy?" I point them to Interview with the Vampire. I feel like that's the episode that you're going to, if you're not interested in this, I think the Interview with the Vampire episode is a very good look at, do I want to know more about this outside of just they're talking about a movie I probably know about?
Yeah, vampires are definitely one of the more accessible transformations for sure. Mm-hmm. And like that movie is not obscure.
It's no wish me luck.
Wish that movie was more obscure. But like, now that you mention it, like that would be a really good one. That's just like, let's dip your toe into the whole concept. Let's discuss this kind of discussion. Cause yeah, like I remember, I asked for PTO, for work, and they're like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to New Jersey. And they're like, what for? It's like, so I have to tell you about what I did my master's in. And then I'm going to be doing a panel there where I discuss it. And they're like, that's really cool. And I'm like, yes. Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
I'm also going to be meeting a lot of very interesting people, and I'm really looking forward to it, but I'm just going to play the cool of just... I'm going there for professional reasons, for suits and ties. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like... I haven't had anybody ask, like, oh, what's your podcast about? I haven't... I maybe it's because I'm, again, very secretive, and I haven't really put out there that I do a podcast except for on, like, Instagram. Mm-hmm. But it's, yeah, I like the fact that you one, we're able to do that and be open about that. And two, that's a really good suggestion. I'll have to keep that in mind because, yeah, I don't think we could point people to Wasp Woman in the same way.
No, maybe.
I would like to.
There are some that I'd love people to experience, but I'm also not going to be like, oh, you don't know anything about this genre? Listen to the interview with the erotic mind control author, J.R. Pars. Start with that one. Like, no, it's not.
Yeah,
not the gateway.
Dip the toe in the not erotic stuff, and then we can move into the erotic stuff.
Yeah.
Once you understand, like, that we're talking about, this entire premise of transformation as a mechanic. And a tool in storytelling. Once you learn that that's the focus and you can like kind of shift your perspective to that, then we can move on to how it's being used.
And, for me, it's always a little bit tricky where it's like, oh, yes, I write erotic transformation fiction. And then like, oh, do you do a podcast? And I'm like, yes, I do a podcast. And not everything on the podcast is about eroticism. Like, it's hard. People seem to sometimes find it difficult to kind of be walked back from the fact that this is not a podcast that's, R-rated or NC-17 or whatever for me, because as you said, it's a story function. It's a trope that is in all sorts of media amongst all different demographics. And I think for me, it's difficult for people to say that, what I write, which is meant for a mature consumption, that is not the same as why I do this podcast, because I do believe the transformation genre and the fiction and the metaphor and everything else is a very legitimate thing to study and explore that is not necessarily always going to be about somebody getting off.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, especially because of just the way that we treat sex in general, is that people treat sex as a stain, as in... But the moment that you've put yourself into it, if you think about like any kind of show, like, or even just in relationships, people assume that like once you've crossed a line, you're stained. You can't get it out. You can try, but like, like if you think about like in shows, like, the characters kiss, something dramatic has to happen before like they can pretend that didn't happen. Like if the show like shows nudity, it's automatically just like one time, boom, that's the rating. And it will never come back. This series is known for that. Like, you look at like Friday the 13th, right? Like, just what it was and now what it can't not be. And so they kind of like, we have this like hard set perspective of like, well, they talked about eroticism one time, so it's got to be about eroticism because you can't make it not erotic again. And then we talk about Fern Gully.
Yeah. And you know what? I want to actually share something here. And this actually happened within the community. So it's something that I think we within this erotic community struggle with, or at least still need to kind of face a little bit. Is I wrote a story, and it went to the one of the competitions, and so I got like reviews and things back, and people generally liked it. I'm not trying to boast there. I'm thankful for the positive responses that it got, but in the story,
you earned them.
In the story, a character is changing sizes and has an orgasm during it. And some of the feedback I got was like, why does the character need to be having an orgasm while this happens? And it got me thinking. I'm like, well, it's a physiological change. So really there's three things totally, if you think about biological functions, there are three possible things that could happen, which are all equally capable of happening, like logically. You either feel nothing from it. Your body just doesn't feel anything from a size change. Your body feels pain from a size change. Or your body feels pleasure from a size change. And in my mind, logically, I'm like, this is a fictional thing. It can't actually happen. But those are the three different outcomes that a human being can pretty much have from a what do I feel sort of aspect. Pain, pleasure, or nothing. And from a completely amoral standpoint, any one of those three options is just as likely as the other.
Well, yeah, I mean, that actually makes a lot of sense. Because one, there's the physiological part of it, naturally, because it could be disorienting, which is not necessarily pain, but it's not pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
there could be nerve stimulation, which, yeah, of course, naturally. Or, yeah, it's due to the mechanics. It could just be nothing. It could be good, but not in a sexual way. And why does it have to matter? Because good is good. It could endorphins are endorphins, right?
Yeah.
There's lots of chemical receptors. But then there's also the psychological aspect of it. Because a lot of times, remember, there are people who can experience orgasm through pain.
Yep.
There are people who can not get sexually aroused by physical pleasure. And sometimes you can experience physical pleasure with nothing going on.
Mm-hmm.
Like, mentally, you can have a lot going on, but the situation is non-sexual. And, like, all these things.
Right.
So it's not even, like, 3 outcomes. It's technically, when you combine it, you have, like, 9.
That's very true.
And then from there, it's fiction, so you can make it whatever the hell you want.
Which is, yes. And I don't care. It's fine feedback. I don't take any of it personally. I don't judge. It's fine. But I did, like, it made me think. I'm like, the only reason somebody has, like, to ask, why did you choose this over something else, is because that person, I believe, like, thought that was the wrong choice. Like, that was
they ranked it, and
right.
That was like, why, like, they put a moral weight on the sexual one,
right? And I do 100% believe that if I had that character change size with no physiological experience, or if it had been expressed as a painful experience, I don't think I would have gotten that feedback. And
it would have changed the entire tone of the story.
Exactly. And it's just something that struck me. I was like, man, this was something written for a community that wants this erotic aspect, but I got pushback for including it. And so it's just something that I do feel like that like moral judgment against a sexual reaction, which, again, outside of human beings looking at things and judging them morally or amorally or good as bad, our bodies experience things without, like, a ethical, like, judgment of it.
Yeah, brain chemistry doesn't care about culture.
Right. And so it just seemed like I don't know, it just struck me as something that, even in the community, I think that it's difficult to get away from that broader puritanical opinion on, like, judging the inclusion of a sexual experience in a story, even if
context plays a lot of role. Context is entirely essential to changing the very meaning of a situation. And so, like, I can see, like, some instances where I kind of get upset when they, like, sexualize something that doesn't need to be sexualized, in the sense of, like, they're doing it to kind of, like, hit a low bar. Like, they're just kind of like, let's make it appealing in the only way we know how, base brain stuff. But, like, you weren't doing it for base appeal. You were doing it because you were exploring transformation from a character perspective.
I'd like to think so.
I mean, that was your intention.
It was.
It's not like adding a moan to a menu screen because, like, you want that environment. You want to set that atmosphere for your piece, for your art. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at Bayonetta. Because, like, Bayonetta is overtly sexual, but also it's an entire conversation about, like, feminism. But the point is, I know that some people will add the sex appeal only to try to drive that more primitive popularity. Like, it's like that's another one, like canned laughter in a show. Like, it's not actually value, it's just something that you can do. But I know how you write, so you're not doing it for cheap kicks, and you're not doing it because it's what works. You did it because you made the conscious choice, because you've already explained your introspection. You saw 3 possibilities, and 2 of them would have completely changed the tone. And so the third one did change the tone, but it's the way you chose it to. It's not like you accidentally wrote a moan in. Oops, orgasm. Like, no, you made the conscious choice that this is what happened to the person. And so here we are. And we can talk about the implications of that all night. But at the end of the day, it made some people uncomfortable for whatever reason. And it could be something deeply personal, or it could just be like they thought it was a cheap trick, or, your way of just like slipping a little bit of eroticism into it, but like it was supposed to be an erotic story, right?
Well, I mean, it was supposed to be a story that explored somebody's new experience of a thing.
So in a way, the novelty of it, yeah, like if, because like for me, yeah, including sensual pleasure does not automatically make something pornographic, but to make something painful does veer it more towards horror.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
like
absolutely.
Automatically, like as if you make it neutral, then it's just a mechanic to drive the story. You're focused on something else. It's not. You need them to be big, and so you just make them big. But by putting a personal feeling to the aspect to the action and the process, you've shifted what you overall want the piece to feel like. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, here I am digging into your.
No, I'm fine with that. I'll also put forward another perfectly, as I said, equally viable option. Maybe I'm a bad writer. So
no.
That's also possible. I mean, this is also why I believe in content warnings and things like that, so people do know what they're getting into whenever they read anything. So,
yeah.
But yeah. Anyway,
that's really funny. No, you're not a bad writer.
Hey, it's like Mythbusters. Failure is always an option.
As long as you write everything down.
Yes.
That's good science.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, yeah. Is there anything else as we reflect on our year and some of podcasting you wanted to touch on?
I think the biggest thing because we covered a lot of big things. I like the spread of things that we've covered. Of all the movies we could have covered, like they've all thematically been very different. Because we touched on, because we talked through the process. Like if you follow the flow of it, you can kind of tell like what we were going for, like some of the like really obvious transformation stuff. But like to pick like Mortal Kombat, then to pick like a German kids film, and then we went American Werewolf in London because that was recommended. Mm-hmm. That was the producer.
Thanks to the producer for that one. Yep.
That was a good movie. It was a good episode. And then we went to like Roger Corman's 50-Foot Cheerleader. And then we went to Wasp Woman. We went to both of them. And like we kept going back to like really, really old movies. But then we like Wish Me Luck happened. But like I don't regret Wish Me Luck in the podcast sense. I regret that I remember it happened, and I regret that Roger Kane, the guy who played Slag, had a stroke recently. He's doing okay, but he probably won't be able to act again, which is really unfortunate, because I love him as an actor. It's not his fault. He didn't get paid enough to be in that movie. The orangutan didn't get paid enough to be in that movie.
No.
But I liked that we had this... that even when we didn't enjoy what we were watching, we still enjoyed talking about it. We still enjoyed looking at it objectively through the lens of cause, process, and impact, and trying to bring in the little bits of theory that I can remember and like when it's relevant. There was discussions about what the movie was talking about and not just the movie. I think we've been doing very well, like, on balancing not only like a plot synopsis, but also just like, but let's talk about like how this movie utilizes transformation, because that's the whole premise. That's why we're here. If we didn't do that, then we would just be like a lower budget, real gags, or what's the name of the Mystery Science Theater people?
Oh, Riff Tracks.
Riff Tracks. Well, we need to make real gags because apparently that's a legally distinct property.
Yes, exactly. And, Pretorius and I actually did a little bit of that for this last SizeCon Micro, because we did a riffing of the 1959 50-Foot Woman, which I actually could probably just release that because I have all that audio on its own. But
awesome.
Yeah, to though, however, touch back with what you were saying. First of all, I take this very seriously. I would love to have gotten drunk to talk about Wish Me Luck. But this this topic and this subject is anything I take seriously, and I try and be professional about it, and therefore was sober for that experience. But I think one of the things that separates what we're doing, I hope, from other podcasts that I love, like the Flophouse, or I don't listen to How Did This Get Made so much since I found the Flophouse, but podcasts that pick apart movies. Like, we're not here to pick apart a movie. We are here to watch a movie, good or bad, that delves with this cultural phenomenon and discuss that. And as you said, we're doing a book, and we've done a graphic novel / podcast with the Adventure Zone. Like, we're here not to tear apart things, as fun as that is sometimes, but to honestly celebrate this genre and look at when it's done, what works and what doesn't work, and what could be done better, and how do we advance this genre. I think I'm better at talking about it than necessarily doing it in my own work. But, it's a fascinating topic, and I love revisiting it, and I hope that people enjoy our exploration of it.
I like that we at least approach it, we always approach it, no matter what it is, with the same level of respect, in the sense that, like, granted, Wish Me Luck is a wonderful outlier because we don't respect that, but we still, like, we don't treat Fern Gully any different than the Wasp Woman than the Adventure Zone. Like, when it comes to the respect for the discussion, it's not like we just, like, one day we're just like, but let's just make fun of it. We did put the effort and the, I guess respect isn't really the word. It's more of like, we try to be insightful. And we try to be, what the 3 words in your intro, respectful, insightful, and
inclusive.
Something else. Inclusive. Exactly. And we want to do that, and we do that. I think we do that. Maybe I'm delusional. But I also am going to say, I don't write, so you're already 2 steps ahead of doing better.
I'm only doing better if I'm doing better.
I will say that I know that when we discuss things, even when, like, at the end of the discussion, I'm like, I don't really like how that sat. Because we had that with, who was the person we were talking to? And we were talking about the, it's that second interview we did. And I felt, like, really uncomfortable about, like, the transgender, transsexual,
with JR parts.
The alter sex.
Yes.
The terminology with that. And I'm still working through that because I want to be the most inclusive. I want to be the most appropriate, most respectful, and talking about these subjects in the way that is not to be like, I'm afraid of being offensive. It's more of, I want to be respectful, and I don't want to punch down. I'd rather punch straight up. I'd rather be more satirical but, like, never hurt people through the use of either outdated terms or insensitive terms. And so I want to carry that energy in everything I do, because I still think back on, like, what was one of the notes I made in here? I made a note about in Mood Boobs. We were talking about, like, kind of like the exploration of, like, what inspires people to make things. And I realized, like, part of the way that we were talking with Rolf, you could tell that he had, like, this idea in his head that he wanted to do something, and he liked the idea of things, but he didn't want to admit it. But we were kind of also on our end, like, we don't want to accuse you, but we wanted to, like, kind of like, hey, you can be open about it. But I don't. I just feel like I still think back to the older episodes and want to improve, like, the language I use and the respect I have for everyone involved, even though sometimes the movie sucks or the book is hard to get through because you have a bad audiobook reader.
I'm not going to rag on my audiobook of Dr. Moreau, but I will say a couple things there. Yes, I agree that I always want to do better and be more respectful. And I also want to say that ever since I said Asian mythology earlier, I have been thinking in my head, that seems like a very Western-centric thing to say, because there are hundreds of different mythologies across the many cultures and countries of Asia, and it's been bothering me since I said that. So I want to say that I don't think that was the right way to try and be aware of the mythologies that aren't just Greek mythology and Roman mythology. Of course, right. The many different mythologies across many different Asian cultures that are all unique in their own ways. And that's been bugging me since I said it. And I almost thought to myself, I'll just edit that out when I go to edit this earlier. But it is something that I think, isn't fair to just edit out, that it needs to be something that's called out and talked about.
Yes, I absolutely agree. I can't believe I didn't catch it. I guess it's just, that's the problem when you've just been raised to kind of view a thing of just like, well, the prime meridian has to be in England. Why wouldn't it be? Mm-hmm. Like, it didn't even click until you're like, Asia is a lot. There's a lot to Asia. And I bet you Mongolia has a completely different view than the Philippines, because they live in different places with different people. And it's like, yeah, that does make sense now that you mention it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know there's going to be many things that, we're not going to catch, and I will want us to be called out on it. And I will always own that. And I will, try and be better about it. And I think we touched a little bit about this in our Adventure Zone episode. That, we all should be trying to be being better, not just in our podcasts, which I'd like to think every episode gets a little better, but also in how we are addressing our fellow human beings in this world. And so, if there's anything that I could leave, it's that, I hope this podcast helps people open themselves up to what other people find of interest, even in genres and ways that you don't even know could be an option, and maybe even helping you find a way of bringing language and voice to something inside you that you haven't been able to quite connect with yet. So
I'm all about giving people the language to explore. Like, that's one of my personal philosophies. It's one of my goals, for my career. I intend to give people the words that aren't handed to us. The words about, for me, it's sexual health education. So it's going to be about words like consent. Consent is not always sexual. We can talk about consent with 3-year-olds about whether or not you have to give someone a hug.
Or want to be tickled.
Or want to be tickled, or whatever. It's your body. Being aware of what you have, what you are, and what you can do, and what in your limitations, establishing boundaries. We don't teach this language in the same way that we should. And so I think that, much in the same vein of this, I love helping people, when you, a word is meant to convey a concept, idea. That's the entire point of linguistics. It's we have created things, noises put together, that can transmit this nebulous idea I have in my head to your head. And if I can give you something new, to help you build that house in your head, to really figure out this concept, or just to really kind of identify something within yourself that you didn't know you had, that you just, or you felt it, but you don't know what it is. I feel like this is the podcast to do that. Really, because again, it's not intrinsically sexual. I got into the whole thing because I learned it was a sexual thing after watching years and years of Muppets shows and cartoons and movies with all these different mechanics, and then you learn that people get off on it. And it's okay, so I'm more fascinated by the erotic subtext, but it's not. It doesn't have to be, because we've spent most of our lives not understanding that it could be. And so now, you and me, we're working together to expand horizons.
I hope.
And I like that.
As do I. And I think before we transition to our SizeCon February 2020 interview, first, any other things you want to touch on before I say what I'd like to say?
Oh, no, I've already spoken enough. if people want to talk at me, then they're free to reach out to me, either through the modmetapodcast at Gmail, or through my Instagram, the Ford is real, or whatever. I'm always eager to chat.
And you know what? Yeah, so before I, do my usual thing of closing the episode before doing any sort of plugs, let me just add that, I've been trying to be more active on Twitter, and if you'd like to continue any of this conversation, I am at Dan_standing. Don't spell out underscore, it is the symbol. At Dan_standing at Twitter. I'd love to have conversations with you there. But of course, also, if you email us at modmetapodcast@gmail.com, both Fort and I can together be in that conversation. Or you can just tweet at us. I don't actually know if you're on Twitter, but anyway.
I am barely. I'm legally on Twitter.
Legally on Twitter.
I like the idea of Twitter, but I never really think about tweeting.
Let me, and that's fine. I'm not going to say anybody should be more or less on Twitter, but before we transition to the interview, which is how we'll close the episode, I just want to say this. Not only have I become a father, but also my only sister, she had her first child, also my first niece, literally the week before we brought home our child. So
wow.
You can imagine my parents are over the hill, over the moon over having all of a sudden two granddaughters to fawn over. But as my sister was pregnant, and then after, of course, we learned I've been thinking a lot about things, and I was gifted by my father when I was very little with the Encyclopedia of Things That Never Were. I've now managed to find copies of it for both my daughter and my niece, as my copy got peed on by a cat. So if people want to look this up and buy it now, go ahead. I've got my fresh copy. But the
you got yours.
I've got mine. So the Encyclopedia of Things That Never Were, and I wanted to write in it a message for my niece, and I'll be giving the same message to my daughter eventually. But I wrote in it that so long as there are people like you as long as there are nope, hold on, it's been a little while since I wrote it. There will always be magic in the world so long as there are people willing to make it. And for me, what are not letters but literally runes? Letters that we may use to put together words and sentences and paragraphs that bring people emotional reactions, joy, pleasure, fear. It's literally magic. Like, we literally have runes that can, throughout space and time, convey thoughts and joy and experiences. It's a real thing. It's this magic that we have. And I just hope that, we, through this podcast, and if we do, a book that kind of touches on it, or just through my writing or through your writing of your paper, that we are able to put a little bit more magic into the world through these runes that we have. And that, I don't know, I've lost the thread of that, but be good to each other, be creative, and always remember that there's very little magic around us. We just have to remember it's there.
In my time of DMing, I understand there's a school called evocation, and words are evocative. You can literally make someone cry 200 years after your death.
Yeah.
Like, it's the power of words is not to be discounted. And I will admit that, like, if there is a type of magic that isn't just being able to make minute rice in 58 seconds, or making a really good cup of coffee even though you use the same coffee grounds as everyone else, like, I believe in that magic. But the power to move people through words, through literal scratches on, wood pulp and graphite, I think that's immeasurable.
Yeah. So, as we leave you with our first recorded words together, we hope that we, I talked about written words, but, through these recorded words also, bring a little bit more inclusion and comfort and exploration into your lives. And Mr. Ford, I hope that we get to continue doing this for years to come.
I think we can do that as long as we both want to. So I'm down. If you're down, we're good.
All right. And I hope you listeners are down as well. So thank you for listening. And we'll sign off and let you go to our past selves from February 2020 of SizeCon.
Testing.
Oop. Yeah, all right. I'm seeing squiggly lines.
The levels are present.
There are levels. I'm definitely gonna have to do some post when this is done because there are way more squiggly lines than I think we were supposed to have. But whatever. Okay.
And then I'm gonna see if I can balance that, and then I'm gonna look and see how dumb that looks.
Okay.
Ah.
I'll look into 2/3 space here.
Look mildly off-center. Yeah, it's a good portrait.
Oh, thank you. I have a jawline and then a lot of fluff, so.
All right, so it's a little bit here, and then I'm going to. Yeah, this is a better. And thank God you brought that mic, because the audio sucks. Because it's a phone.
Yeah, I mean, it does what it does.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning. At this lovely, what is it, 8:12 a.m. Eastern Time.
On a Sunday.
Yes.
You going to church?
Sometimes I do.
You
Yes,
do?
I do. Mostly because my wife goes. So I have my beliefs, but they don't involve going to a place to practice them.
They're not very structured.
No, they are not. But she sees it more of as a tea ceremony. Like she likes the process of going through everything, and
So Catholic?
it is. She's Catholic, yeah. And as I was raised as well, so
Oh.
I'm familiar with it.
Fun.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as fun as rote can be.
Yes. Yes. I like that we went from zero to the religious discussion.
I wasn't expecting that either, but we can talk about something a little less. We'll call it
Firestorming.
yeah,
Yes.
a little less hellfire.
Okay.
So we're gonna talk about perversion.
Oh, I love another 180.
Do you want to know the fun fact about perversion?
Oh, aren't all fun facts?
Yeah. So, are you like a big fan of etymology?
Yeah.
So perversion originally started, like if you know, like about like inversion or any other kind of like it's verse or is to go somewhere, and then or to orient, and then so inverse is to flip.
Okay.
But the perverse is to deviate from.
Okay.
And so
makes sense.
originally, perverts were people who were labeled who were deviating away from the main doctrine.
Okay.
People who were anti-religious, unreligious.
Okay.
And then right around 1700s, 1800s, that's when they started like, if you are unreligious, no, if you have weird sex, you're anti-religious.
Okay.
You know, back when religion didn't used to have a big hand in sexuality, and then it did. And as soon as it did, perverse swapped meanings to become that.
But okay.
Yeah, I didn't know that. And they're like, "Do you ever think about roots?" And I'm like, "I haven't thought about breaking down words in a long time." So, yes.
Amber was Latin. She studied Latin, and so every once in a while she's like blah 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 thingamabobber, and I'm like, oh okay. My experience with Latin was waiting until Google Translate would let me make Latin phrases.
My experience with Latin was listening to music in like JRPGs.
Nice. I will say I have not read it. I found it at a used book sale. It's Winnie the Pooh translated into Latin, and it's like et tu Pooh-Winnie or something like that. And it is the oddest thing to read through because he's also dressed in Roman centurion armor throughout it. It's very odd.
I'm gonna need to do that. I need to get my hands on that.
Yeah, look that up. I don't remember the exact title, but I'm sure if you Google Winnie the Pooh Latin, it'll probably come up.
I have a dangerous idea.
Uh-oh.
That is, we could talk for a very long time.
Yes, we need to focus.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so we're going to start just very basic, very simple.
Okay.
So you're Dan Standing.
I am Dan Standing, yes.
That is what you go by. That is your alias. That's
Yes.
fantastic. How long have you been doing this?
Oh, I was thinking about that the other day because I'll probably have to say it at the panel tonight. I think I'm on year 15 or so.
All right.
I know it's been more than a decade, and then after a decade, I stopped counting. So
All right, so it's been a long time.
yes,
Your experience could feasibly drive.
yeah. Honestly, depending upon the state.
Yeah. So, what prompted you to start 15 years ago?
So I was already interested in transformation themes. I had first through AOL actually discovered Naga's Den, the website Naga's Den, and that had been like this is interesting. Like I was really interested in like supernatural things. I had like the encyclopedia of things that never were that I would like flip through. I had rented Ovid's Metamorphoses from the library so many times that borrowed it so many times that at one point the librarian actually told me I was not allowed to take it again that week.
Really?
Now I don't want
Give
to.
someone else a chance.
Yeah, give someone else. And I don't want to imply that I've read the entire Ovid's Metamorphoses that many times. I had selected portions of it that I really enjoyed, the story of Daphne, etc. But for a long time, I had been interested in the subject matter, and I was between jobs. I was on, I guess it was at the time the BESC forums, and they had just started the hey, send us a story and we'll pay you for it and illustrate it.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, I need money. I think I could do this. This is a thing. And I'd always wanted to be a writer. A writer had been my first little short stories had been on the old mechanical ribbon typewriter, like when I was very young. And so I'm like, I don't think I'm a fine enough writer. I can do this. And submitted my first story to them. It got accepted. That was The Chest. And then they were like, we also need comics. And I was like, I can do a comic. And did that and sent it in. And I've always been fascinated. What had always fascinated me was the description and trying to get across to somebody an impossible experience. And that, I found that to be very satisfying in both the prose and the comic at the time. And it was just like, all right, I'm just going to give this a shot.
Cool. Yeah. So you saw an opportunity, and it was something you wanted to do anyway.
Yes.
And so you seized that.
Yes.
And then you started making money from it.
Oh, well, yeah, kind of.
Technically.
They did pay me.
Was it decent for the time?
For writing an erotic story and getting money for it, I would say any money at that time I considered to be decent. It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough where I had to be like, I don't need to go find myself another job now. I am set. No.
You didn't find your golden ticket.
I did not find the golden ticket in that fashion. And eventually I decided that I was more proud of these works than I originally felt like I was going to be. And realized I want to do this in a way where I can continue to control and own the rights to my works.
As opposed to being a contract writer.
Exactly. So I broke away from the organization that was saying, we'll give you money, and decided I was going to try and do that on my own, to mixed success. But it was fun.
So, what... Right now, is this your primary work? Is this your full-time job?
No, I have a full-time job, but I go in at 7 o'clock and I leave at 3 p.m. I don't get a lunch or anything like that, so that leaves me a good amount of time to be creative and do this outside of that, because my wife works until 5, so I've got a good chunk of time where it's all right, I'm going to go do what I need to do, whatever that is, as the self-marketing, writing, everything person's all right, well, today I got to work on the website, or today I got to write, or today I got to do illustration work, stuff like that.
So, if I may ask, you can say in broad terms, if you don't want people getting too intimate, what do you do?
I do accounts payable. It's a small family company.
That sounds incredibly interesting.
So some people look at sheets of blank music paper and put notes to it and feel like they've written an opera. I look at an Excel page, and I'm like, I can work with this. And so I love two things. One, being able to do an entire Excel sheet, and like I have all these formulas that tell us when everything's due and all that.
Pivot tables are nice.
Don't get me started.
Guess what my dad does?
Pivot tables. Okay.
He forecasts budgets
Oh,
for
yeah.
a big company.
There you go.
So, yeah,
Pivot tables.
He's all about. He's an Excel wizard.
Mm-hmm.
I think you two would get along.
I imagine we may. And then the other thing I love is like I love seeing a pile of things to do and then seeing that there isn't a pile anymore.
That's always very nice.
So so that's two very great like just Zen satisfactions for me.
So yeah, it's you get to manipulate data in the good way, not
Yes.
in how we're seeing it. And then you also get the tangible feeling of accomplishing paperwork.
Yes, exactly. There's nothing worse for me than a job that feels like I'm always at the top of the circle starting over. So yeah, being able to at least look at it and like, okay, this week that's done. I'm gonna stop hitting the table in front of the microphone.
Yeah, that's a great idea. So that's your full-time work, and I'm
Yes.
assuming that it pays you well enough that you don't need to do this other side
No,
work.
and to be honest with you, it does this other side work because I've actually got two different projects that I work on, my dance standing work and then the extern work. The dance standing work does bring in more than I put into it. The extern work does not. So it actually, dance
Balances
standing,
out.
pays for the rest of this other work that I do.
So basically, it's like you have the money that you live on and that you kind of live comfortably on, I'm assuming.
Yes.
And then there's hobby work.
Yes.
And then how you fund that hobby work.
Exactly.
Interesting. So you kind of make it because there's a niche there.
Yeah.
And you like to push the boundaries.
Yes.
That's very interesting.
I'm before I was an accounts payable person, I was actually a product manager at a global organization, and so I try and put into this work, Dan Standing's work, some of the lessons from product managing, like narrowcasting, like audience choosing, pinwheel theory with what I might be talking about later because I'm talking about Patreon at the writers panel. Pinwheel is creating an incentive for your customers to want to help you bring in more people for the mutual benefit of everybody.
Okay.
So the example I hate giving would be Facebook. You get a couple people on, they want to communicate with all the people who aren't on Facebook, so they encourage their friends and family to join Facebook so that they can all intercommunicate. And the benefit to Facebook is now, in their case, getting all of their additional data.
This is where they get everything.
Exactly. So for me, with the pinwheeling is way less evil, I think.
Well, as a concept, it's not intrinsically
No,
evil.
it isn't. For me, because I'm a writer and I don't, I have to collaborate with artists. My pinwheel is that the more people we bring into the Patreon, every one of my levels for the most part is, well, when we get this much to the goal, we can all get another page of a comic this month, every month, and so it's a mutual benefit for everybody to be a part of it, talking about it, and hopefully bringing people who will have mutual interests to enjoy it.
Interesting. So you went to school for accounts payable.
I got sent to conventions for. Oh no, I didn't go to. I'm not going to school for anything. I'm a philosophy major. This is all stuff I'm self-taught.
So you went to school for philosophy, bachelor's, I'm assuming.
Yes, actually, it's a double bachelor's in English and philosophy.
And then you're like, well, this isn't working out.
Not in the way you'd think. I got hired into the job that eventually became the product manager because the guy who was hiring me was also a philosophy major.
Oh.
Yes. So
you are defying every odd.
That is my life. I recognize that I have been extraordinarily fortunate in many ways. I like to think it's the old Thomas Jefferson adage of I love good luck. The harder I work, the more of it I seem to get.
That's a good one.
So.
I feel like I should just work hard. But it's hard.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you it's a question that seems very obvious, but it does need to be asked. Do you find your work fulfilling?
I do. One of the things that I most want to try and do before I die is hopefully put more good stuff into the world than I accidentally bring in bad stuff. And I feel that this work, not just because people physically enjoy it, but I do try and be a positive writer. I've tried to be like someone who people can look to and say, hey, I'm not the only one who thinks this stuff, and just be a source of, not good. Good sounds wrong. I'm not a source of good, but a source of positivity. Yeah, and it took me a long time to tell myself this is that. I mean, there are certainly many times where
you were raised Catholic.
There are many times where there are entire swaths of my creative history that are lost because I hit a point where I was like, I feel like I shouldn't be doing this. I'm going to delete all of my stuff and say done with it.
So there was a period of shame.
There was, absolutely. But I was a teenager, and so that passed.
Yeah. Shame in teenage is pretty, I think, visual metaphor.
And, I think you eventually come to a point where you're like, I keep coming back to this. Like, this intrigues me so much that, I can't ignore it. I'm either going to embrace it or I'm going to be miserable cutting that off as part of, who I am.
Yeah. So. There's different types of creativity in what we do every day. You get the creativity of how you solve your problems at work. You get your creativities of how you solve your problems at home. Yeah. And you have your creativity and also expressing what you're into and how to express that in a meaningful way to others. Because like a lot of times, like as I'm sure you're very aware, there is a distinct line between creator and consumer.
Yes.
And so the fact that you have already bridged that gap and you are creating shows that you are you're doing everything you say you want to do. You're kind of you're living that philosophy because I don't create a lot. I have a lot of fun when I do.
Let me tell you, if I understand what it is you've created from what I've been told, you've created a whole lot damn more difficult thing than I can do.
What, a thesis?
Yes.
You've written more in your life. But that's because mine was like I feel like mine's kind of like a firework.
Okay. All right.
There's some building. There's some time. It took a couple months of just nonstop work, and the payoff, boom. And now I'm just making sure that explosion lasts as long as it can until I have to do something else.
Okay, I get you.
Because you are sustained making new projects.
Yes.
And you're going to feasibly do this until you're done. And that done may never happen.
Well, probably dead. That's
dead
my plan.
Or disabled.
Yeah.
But yes. I'm going to take a moment because we got a rattly card.
Yeah, we do. That's okay.
I give you a moment to check out these questions.
I'm going to make sure everything looks good on the recording here.
Check. So.
Okay, they're on carpet.
Yes. So, you write for you. You write the ideas you have. It looks like you do a lot of research to get new ideas and see new ways to express things. Do you take commissions?
I used to take commissions, and I still don't say that I don't, but I took commissions a while ago, and a huge disruption in my life happened, and there were 2 commissions that basically languished for years. And it's one of those things where I just woke up every day feeling terrible that I wasn't going to get to it, but I'm like, I have family members that I need to go take care of, blah, blah, blah. Thankfully, both of the commissioners were understanding. One of them forgot they had commissioned me in the first place, so I sent them a story, and they were like, oh, I did not know that I was getting this at any point.
It's been years.
Yeah. So that was good, but I haven't come up with a method that I know works for me of how I would guarantee that would be done in a manner timely enough to satisfy what my expectations are for someone who's commissioned it. Because as someone who cannot draw, I've done a lot of commissions of artwork, and so I have that experience of that anxiety of I've given you money, what's going on, I'd like to see it, I see you on social media, you're at the gym right now, I haven't gotten art yet.
Where are the results?
Yeah, so I don't, as I said, I want to put more good into the world than bad, and part of that bad I don't want to put in the world is giving someone else anxiety. So
that's a very interesting philosophy.
Thank you.
Because there's lots of different reasons to not take commissions.
Mm-hmm.
I said the first one is, I don't like giving people anxiety. You're the first one to tell me that. Usually people don't like the pressure. Or they don't want people asking them very interesting questions. Requests for things that they don't want to do. Do you get a lot of input from the community on what you should do?
Yes and no. Now that I'm on Discord, I've gotten a lot more direct outreach than I ever did just when I had my website or even in the Patreon in general. And I'm upfront with people. as far as I'm concerned, anything anybody wants to do or read in fiction is mostly fine. Obviously, if you're doing it in real life, it has to be consensual. There's nobody can get hurt that doesn't want to be getting hurt, etc., etc. So if somebody comes to me and has said, "Hey, would you write this?" My answer to that is, I don't know how to write it without adding to the negative stereotypes of that thing. Mm-hmm. That is actually my greatest. I'm saying a lot of greatest. That's one of my fears. Is that as I'm a white cis hetero male, mm-hmm. I do not know a lot of things. I do not know a lot of experiences, and I've tried very hard to be conscious of. I don't think that I'm going to do this in a way that's going to elevate that topic, whatever it is. So that is how I'm like no for the most part, and sometimes that's because it doesn't interest me, so I haven't tried to know more about it.
Right. So there's doing what you like and what you know,
mm-hmm.
and there's also you're just taking a step back and letting people who are probably in a better position to add to that, to contribute to that discourse and all that, to do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good philosophy as well. I'm being very judgy.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
I mean, as long as you're positive judgy, then I'm fine with it.
So, you feel generally positive about your work?
Nowadays, yes.
Yeah, nowadays.
Yes.
So there was a while.
There was a long time, and part of my positivity right now is I think it's only been 3 weeks ago that I also told my parents what I do.
I was going to ask you about that, about your disclosure.
Yes. So the oldest disclosure would be with who was then my wife, then my girlfriend, now my wife. Mm-hmm. We had known each other through all of college. She was a year ahead of me in college. We'd known each other through all of college. After she graduated.
Philosophy?
She did not. She was just English. We started dating after college, after 3 years of solid friendship and being told over and over again, you need to get together, you need to get together. And I had been writing by that point for a couple of years. And I was like, I feel like if I don't tell you this up front at this early dating stage, that this is what I do, at the time it was, it's going to be a bigger deal down the line. Small lies plus time equal big lies.
That they grow.
Yeah. So we disagree on where we were for this. I remember us being in her apartment bedroom. She remembers us being somewhere else. But I was like, I need to tell you, I am terrible at delivering news at all. Which is kind of great because everyone always assumes it's worse than what it's going to be. I'm like, I need to tell you something. I write pornography. It's about breasts expanding. And that was basically the long and short of it. And she just started laughing in my face. Because if you know me outside of this, you would never in 1,000 years guess that that's the thing that I write. I'm weirdly quiet, but also bombastic when I need to be. Like, I'm just the nice guy. Mm-hmm. And so she just laughed in my face, which is probably the best reaction I could have asked for.
It's better than disgust.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm grateful for that reaction. And she was like, fine, whatever. We talked out what that meant between the two of us, and she was fine with all of that. And she's here with me today. So
right, she came with you.
Exactly.
To SizeCon.
She's fully embraced it. She might be my biggest hype person. Like, just so proud of me in ways that I do not understand.
Oh, that's a good spouse.
Yes, she's amazing. And for a long time, that was it. Slowly, I started telling other friends, a couple of friends from high school, a couple of friends in college, being more open about it.
Out of the blue, or did they ask these questions?
Sometimes out of the blue. Like, I had gotten a couple of the comics that I had written for the BSC printed for the heck of it, and I was like, I have a thing to show you, and just like handed them these things.
I made this.
This is mine. And they were like, oh, okay. Still talk to me. But we were like, okay. And then actually prepping for SizeCon, I wanted to bring some photo boxes so I could organize the microprints. Mm-hmm. And I knew my mother had some additionals. And I've never not said that I've written mature work to either of my parents before. They've just never asked questions about it.
I mean, I imagine the question doesn't really want to come up.
No, I don't know how many parents really want more details. If you
Son, do you make porn?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a conversation I'm willing to have.
They're like, well, here we are. I might as well. So my mother was like, yeah, I'll get you some photo boxes. I have some spares. We went down to the basement. She got them for me, and I'm just standing there, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, I feel like I need to tell her what these are for. And
just in case she doesn't want them back.
Yeah. And I told her, and I kind of tried to do it gently. I'm like, I write mature works. They're illustrated. I don't illustrate them, but I write them. Blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. And she's like, oh, okay, fine, yeah, whatever. The next day, Amber and I are over for dinner at my parents' house. Amber had a couple, and because again she's my greatest hype person, was like, I already told you about all that. And she's going into far more detail than I had ever expected. And she also had a great time telling my sister. But the reactions basically were my father came over and high-fived me.
Are you leaving?
And that was kind of the end of it.
Oh, you said hi.
And then my mother was like, "Can we not call it pornography? We're just gonna call it your kinky writing."
That's much better, Mother.
Yeah, I'm like, fine. You know what? I'm fine with that. So yeah. So they know, fairly fresh for my parents, but long time for my wife.
All right. So yeah, that was something you felt very inclined to share, and you don't feel disinclined from sharing it with others.
Not maybe my coworkers.
Well,
but
I understand. Like from a
Yes.
professional standpoint,
Yes,
don't.
but in
like a
the
personal
personal life,
standpoint.
yes.
All right, because I was going to ask about the separation of you from your work, what you do online versus what you do offline.
Yes, I would say from day one, the moment I was like, I am creating a pseudonym for myself, and my pseudonym, Dan Standing, it was originally Standing Dan, and then one day I forgot what order they went in, and just became Dan Standing from that point. But the moment I was like, I'm going to create a name for myself on the internet, I promised myself, this will never be anything more than just a different name. I'm never going to do anything different than I would as myself in real life. I'm always going to be the same person. It's just something.
You're not gonna make a persona.
Dan. Exactly. This is just who it is, and it's never going to be something I'm going to hide behind to do something that I wouldn't otherwise do.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
All right, so you've been very transparent in that way.
Yes,
And you're
right.
being transparent now by being on camera.
Yes. Hello.
Hi.
I've got my green band on.
So, is there anything you think that's too weird?
Weird is a bad word for it.
It is.
I think.
it's apt.
I feel it is. No, I think my division for anything is just going to be consent or non-consent, and as long as whatever you're doing, especially in real life, involves consent with whatever is, and whatever you're doing it with is capable of giving consent, fine. I don't care if it's people involved, if you're many people, if you're stacked on top of the Eiffel Tower. It doesn't matter to me, as long as everyone's okay with doing it and are capable of, with full knowledge, both in experience and consciousness, say, yes, I want to be doing this. I write stories where people grow phalluses off the front of their face, or dick tails or multiple tentacles. Like, I don't know where I would begin to say whether or not that's weird or not. I don't think, if you want to say, do I think network television would air it? No. That might be the definition of weird for many, but for me, that's not the line that I draw.
Interesting. That's a good distinction. I think it's a healthy distinction. But I always ask because there are people just kind of like, I don't understand this aspect, or I don't understand people who really enjoy this.
And there are things that I don't understand the enjoyment of. I'm not going to kink shame anybody,
right.
But I feel like I can't look at myself and say, oh, I'm going to write later about two human beings who get fused front to front, so that they're two walking butts. I don't think I can look at anybody else and say, your stuff's weird. Like, what you're into is weird.
Yeah. You know what? Mine's fine.
Yeah. Because I'm the center of the universe, so...
Yeah. Obviously, my moral compass is flawless.
Uh-huh.
Do you encounter a lot of resistance to your work?
I would say a long time ago, I probably had like one or two reviews of something that I posted up. As far if you're meaning resistance, have I ever had a difficulty like finding an outlet for it?
No,
or
more in the
just
sense of
personal?
like, have you experienced any kind of like social hardship? Have you been antagonized? Have you faced any kind of stigma for the work you do?
No. I would say no. And most of that is because I know the privilege that I have. And part of that's just stubborn hubris. I can be told, I don't like what you're doing. You shouldn't be doing it. And I can be like, oh, I'm gonna keep doing it. There's nothing you can do to stop me from doing it. Because that's just how I have experienced life. So that's kind of my feeling of it. Is like, I know if you go onto like eHentai, somebody put up all of one of my comics, and there's plenty of comments on there of like, what is this? This is terrible. Like, this should not have been. Like, this is weird. I shouldn't have. This shouldn't have been done. And I'm like, screw you. Like, I'm gonna keep doing it because I can.
That's a lot of resilience.
But I'm my father's child. I am a stubborn ass. And I love my father. He's a great man. But I try really hard to be really conscious of what my stubborn assery could impact other people.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be, if it was something like what you are doing is reflecting negatively on who I am. Like, and if I had written something where it was like, well, you're negatively stereotyping someone, then that would be like, oh crap, okay, I need to not do that.
That's a completely different.
Actually, I did. I wrote a story called Futanari Photo Freakout, and I had begun talking with somebody who found the term Futanari offensive, and I was like, well, what's a better term? And they said ultrasex, and I was like, okay, so if you go on to Amazon, you will not find that original story anymore. I took it down, renamed it, it's like Pantyhose Freakout or something like that, and put it up. But the original story is still there with it in the end, and I have a bit saying, this was the original story. I own that I wrote this and used this terminology. I've since learned that maybe that's not the best term to use. So this is the version that's without that, and here's the old version that includes that, because we shouldn't erase that, but we should say, we've evolved, and here's where we came from, and here's why, and here's the new way of doing it.
All in a Looney Tunes.
Yes. Oh God, I was looking up the history of Tom and Jerry the other day.
Oh no.
Oh, it was like,
no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For a quick diversion, while I scroll down, I watched with my partner. We watched some of the really old Looney Tunes, like the 1940s Looney Tunes,
like Bosco or
Bosco.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
We were watching, like, oh, there's a lot of World War II stuff. What the hell is going on here?
Yeah, there's some interesting cartoons at the time. And again, we can't erase that. We shouldn't erase that. But we absolutely should, A, maybe not play it on regular television anymore, but
right.
B, say, we shouldn't point to it and be like, this, we don't do this anymore, and here's why. And I don't mean just don't make a terrible World War II stereotype thing anymore, but like, transitively be like, we shouldn't do our version of that anymore either.
Right. Interesting. So, I want to talk a little bit more about the online community.
All right.
Yeah.
I'm rubbish at the online community. I was
getting you host your own site and you have a Discord and all that.
Yes.
But like, do you have solid connections in the online community?
I have. So because after breaking away from BESC and really wanting to like kind of gain ownership of all of my stuff, I sort of just pulled back into my website and what I was doing. And I would still go out and I would still kind of read stuff, but I was never at forums. Honestly, give me massive anxiety. Like I look at them and I'm like, well, here's all this history I don't know. What am I gonna say that's stupid or shouldn't be said or has already been said? And here I'm gonna type something in, but I don't know if the response directed that's gonna be in the next hour, in 2 days, in 2 weeks.
Right.
So and I never really got into like chat rooms and things when I was on AOL. It was always one-on-one instant messaging that I did. Mm-hmm. So being a part of the online community has been difficult for me, both from my anxiety over that type of communication and also pulling back into myself. It's only been that Discord has become so big that I've joined more Discords, really tried to get back out there. I've had people who have been like, oh, you're still a thing? Like, you're still alive? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing stuff still. And really trying to be more of part of the community. And that's one of the reasons I'm here, is just to be like, I want to be part of this community. I'm really bad at it, as any of my high school and college friends can tell you. I'm just bad at it regardless of the topic.
Not a social person.
Yeah, I'm not not good at it. I married my best friend. That's part of the problem. It's like, I'm like, okay, I'm set. Yeah, all right.
Who needs other people? I've got everything I need.
Yeah. The other part of that, though, is also particularly with Exiern that I work on, is that, and I was mentioning a little bit of this to the producer last night, is that I embrace this idea of a creator who has kind of stepped back and is letting other people interpret their work how they want to, making it their own and how they're reading it and getting out of it. Part of a reaction to my experience of Star Wars, honestly, overall, because I love Star Wars, and for a long time it was just the Star Wars Insider once a month. You get a little bit of information. At the time I was getting, and it was all about the prequels and the special editions and all that. And so with something like Exiern that I write, which is a fantasy, sword sorcery fantasy about self-identity and exploring oneself, I also don't use word bubbles because I'm trying for it to be experience these characters as you would if you were meeting someone, as we are talking. Like, I don't know what's going on in your head.
Right.
I want that experience to be, I have no further insight than what I'm being shown or what I'm reading.
So very limited narrative.
But for the goal of somebody drawing their own opinions and being like, you know what, this person's an asshole, I don't like them, for their own decision making, not me going, here's the protagonist, he's a great guy, he's doing whatever. Like, I find that to be really, as someone who enjoys stories and media, limiting and a little bit crippling to a creative process for the reader. And so that's another reason where I wasn't really big. I didn't really come out into the broader community for a long time, is because I just wanted to kind of put my stuff out there and just let people find what they found out of it, and not be that voice of the creator god saying, "Oh no, this is what I meant. You got it wrong. This is the way I wanted this to be."
Interesting.
So it's only now that I'm kind of like, I'm still trying not to like tell people, "Oh no, this is what this is supposed to be. This is how you're supposed to be reacting to this scene, whatever." But more involved in the community as a whole.
Do you think this has had a positive influence? Do you think other people are kind of taking up this style? Do you think that what your intentions and how you portray things is influencing the way the community does these things?
I don't know if I would think of myself as that influential at this stage. Maybe in 20 years, if somebody reads my work and is like, "Oh, I see what he was trying to do." There's a page in Exiern which is literally just the king, like, resting against the wall in a shower. Yeah, resting against the wall in a shower with the water rushing over him. And, you know, in the storyline, his daughter's almost died. He's supposed to be the guy who knows everything, and he didn't know something. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can take from that. But I want the reader to look at that and say, this is why I think he's doing this. It honestly all stems from a scene from, what's the Tom Cruise movie? Risky Business. It's from Risky Business, where you don't know whether or not the woman that he's with is manipulating him for her own ends, or she's actually cares for him. And there's a great scene in there where she goes to get her purse out of the car, and as she reaches for the purse, all you can see is her hand go in and get the purse, and as she's pulling it out, it accidentally takes the car out of park. Or you can presume it takes the car out of park accidentally. You don't see her face. So you never know at that moment whether or not she intended for the car to roll down the hill into the lake, or that was an accident, and everything off from that is her earnestly trying to help him versus, now you're stuck with me. And so that has been one of the things that I look to of like, okay, that I have no choice but to interpret that one way or another, and that changes entirely how you feel about the character. But if I had the director right there saying, "Oh, I just couldn't film her face in the same shot, and she definitely does that on purpose," that would entirely change how one views that.
Yeah, establishing canon, it definitely it removes possibility. It's good for some things because we want to know, and sometimes you need to know for context. But for you seem to say that context is entirely, up to you and how you interpret this and how you view these characters. I'm not going to tell you how to feel about these characters.
Right. I know how I feel about these characters. I know what's going through their minds, because if I didn't, that would be a shitty way to write it.
That'd be a bad storytelling.
Yes, but
they just walk into each other and stuff happens.
No, go away. Now figure it out yourself.
What's an internal motivation?
Yeah. No, I hate the mystery box thing. I want to know exactly what everything is for my part, even if the readers don't yet.
So, given how you utilize the internet and how your kind of hands-off, method with your work and you're attempting to be more hands-on with the community. How would you? Are there any limitations that the online community has for you?
Limitations to what I
Like
feel like I access, or
like how you can utilize it, because like the internet's been a wonderful resource to accomplish a great number of things in our time.
yes,
Because like, I'm pretty sure neither of us would feel any level of acceptance if we didn't have an online community to say, oh, there's a bunch of people.
Yeah,
This con wouldn't exist without the internet.
right, yes.
Like, that's the kind of thing. And so I wonder, I always ask anyone who utilizes the online community, is there anything that it doesn't do for you?
Make me more money. No. No, but like honestly, that's always my fear whenever it's like I'm introducing myself to a new group, where it's kind of like as my own self promoter, my own brand, let's say. Although I'm not, I hate saying that.
It's a mild business.
Yeah, I'm always fearful of you're only here to pitch yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Like you've been gone for so long. Why now? Like why are you here now? And just being fearful that I'm not going to be a productive addition to that community. Mm-hmm. The bringing in something more, and not being seen as, oh well, you're talking about your story because you want people to go buy it.
Okay. So it's the big limitation of the online is that you can't. There's no. There's a lot of worry about intention.
For myself, yes, I am always worried about
how you're perceived.
Not that I'm like big of myself about it, but I want to be
you don't want to be seen as disingenuous.
Yeah, exactly. Want to be. I'm trying to think. What is it that all millennials want? And not we all want integrity, but I'm a millennial, by the way. I am a millennial when I say that.
So you're in your 30s.
I am in my 30s. I'm like the tail end of like the older millennials. Mm-hmm. Can't think of the word. Real and authentic.
Yes,
I am worried about not looking authentic in my real intentions of being a part of it, of the community.
Because you stand to gain something.
Right.
And there's automatically a mild distrust of anybody who's trying to make any amount of money off of other people.
Yes, and particularly if you are coming into something like, there's so many people here who have been doing this for so long,
right.
They've literally built many parts of this community.
Yeah.
And so it's different, I feel.
You're not a social dynamo, so when you walk in, they automatically assume you've done it for a reason besides, I'm going to give it a shot again?
Yeah, that's what I'm concerned about, honestly, yeah.
So it's not that the community is unwelcoming.
Right.
It's never been unwelcoming.
No, it's super welcoming. There's so many amazing people here.
But you have like this internalized perspective. It sounds like you're trapped a lot in your own head.
I am. I was a philosophy major. Have I mentioned that yet? 7 times?
I heard. And we could talk all about that, but that's a very interesting thing. That like it's not that it can't do anything for you, it's just that you worry about what it is.
Yes.
Not that it's going to do anything anyway, because the worst consequence of people thinking you're being disingenuous is
ignore me.
Yeah,
or tell me to leave.
The result is nothing.
Yeah. I have nothing to lose.
It doesn't. If anything, it doesn't hurt your brand. It just is.
Right. Again, the whole anxiety of not wanting to put more bad into the world, and I end up doing good. Mm-hmm. Showing up and feeling like people feel off-put by my presence is not. Yeah, it's a worry.
All right. I probably should have started with this, and that is at any point, if you're uncomfortable by any of the questions I ask, you are free to say, "No, I'm good."
Okay.
Yes. You have a lot of rights in this room. I
appreciate that.
Yes, because I'm going to ask about sexuality.
Okay, go right ahead.
How much does your work influence your sexuality?
So originally I wrote primarily with female characters because I'm attracted to them. Mm-hmm. Now I write primarily with female characters, not only because I am still attracted to them, but because I realize that sometimes if I don't want to introduce misogyny or a gender dynamic that I don't mean to introduce by having a male-female character dynamic. So I try and limit a lot of... You can never eliminate all subtext. I'm a male writer. It's just never going to be all gone. But I really do try and concentrate on the experience of the person. I have 3 things that I always concentrate on in my writing and when I study other transformation topics. It's cause, which is not only just genie, chemicals, whatever, but also did the person themselves seek out this change? Did somebody else cause it to happen? Those 2 aspects are cause. Then there's process, which is the actual process of the transformation, and then there's impact. So showing beforehand how things were like, and then how that changes. And so, because I want to concentrate on those things for those characters, I do everything I can to push aside the other static that could come up, and whether that's just economic disparagement, racial, sexual, whatever. So, regarding the sexuality, it started out just I like writing about characters that I can describe that I find attractive. Now I've evolved more into that. I still do that, but I have these other reasons why I've done that, and I've gone back and I've changed stories.
Interesting.
That I've seen. Like, again, I always keep the old version, but then like there were other things coming up in the story that I didn't mean there to be. So here's what I really wanted to explore about them.
Interesting. So, is this something you bring into your sex life? Is this something that like you role play out at all with your wife? Like, what do you?
Not really. No. We're pretty. Again, I heard somebody say vanilla was an offensive term. I don't find it offensive, but it is. We don't do that too much. In that, I am more about. I really enjoy the description and like trying to capture for myself the describing an impossible experience. And we've done a little bit here and there, but for the most part, I like a prolonged experience before completion, and she enjoys a more sensual experience that then leads to completion. So we have our compatibility in that fashion.
But so your we'll call this your fetishes, your variations don't actively play a role in your sex life at all.
They don't. No, not really.
Okay. Thank you. Good. That means we can move a couple questions down.
Okay.
Because as you already mentioned earlier, you have a very distinct separation between fantasy and reality. It's got to be consensual. It's got to be everything, and you wouldn't subject anyone to anything.
Right.
So that's what you write and what you're into.
Yes.
Yes. Clear cut. Very simple.
Yes.
Yeah. You're already in a relationship. You're married. They know about your status. And so, yeah.
Okay.
That turns out you're an open book.
I do try. Yeah.
Good. Well, that's all the questions I've got.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I end with the big, powerful ones because I have poor structure.
I find that structure to be very fine. Very fine. Although I'm not going to be, I'm not going to be listening to this fresh later. So I guess we'll leave the audience to decide that.
Yeah, we're going to just edit it and just throw it out there, and I'll never listen to it. You'll never listen to it. And then somebody's going to comment what were you talking about at this time? Do I have to really go to this timestamp?
I definitely had an interview I did for Exier that I have never listened to. I don't feel bad about it too because the guy put a whole lot of work into it, and I'm like, thank you so much. And then
it's all good.
I haven't listened to it.
For the sake of transparency, anything like that, do you have any questions for me?
What was your impetus to a thesis is a big thing.
Yes,
that's a very public big thing.
It is.
What made you decide to do that?
Regards to just this topic.
Yeah.
So, all this is written in the very intro of my thesis. I had to put a lot of it in the foreword so that people understand my context. But I basically 10 years ago, or that's not even 10 years. I'm fucking 30. When I was 17, 18, my friends showed me /D on 4chan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I got just thrown right into the deep end. And, there's a lot of stuff that just this can't be real. People really can't be into this, can they? And we're scrolling through and they're laughing at Duck Girls and all the other memes and all this other stuff. And I'm just and then one of the expansion things popped up and I was just kind of noted.
And favorited. And
yeah, because I could sit there and, we could give the same story that I hear all the time from everyone. And there's when I was 5, I watched this one scene and my body was what? And then because we're putting an adult context on a childhood thing.
Right.
I can't say children are asexual because we don't know. There's a whole lot of mess in trying to make these assumptions about what we can and can't do, baseness and what genetics, all that. Origin's not important. The point is that when I was an adult and I could vote, I was shown something, and I was like, I got to look more into this. And then I did, because I had a computer in my room, because I was also a middle-class white man, you know, and I had a lot of privilege to be able to just go, so what am I going to go to bed, 2? All right. And I just dug through, and I found out about this. I found it wasn't a joke. It was an actual thing people did consistently.
Earnestly.
Yeah. And so originally I went to school for engineering.
Oh.
Because my father's an engineer. And so is his father before him. And I'm good at math and science. And then I went to college. I went to Purdue. And I did not make it through the engineering program.
Oh, no.
Obviously. I do not have the personality to be an engineer. So yeah, I dropped out of that and moved to psychology. Because again, when you're fascinated by sex, and you're fascinated by different kinds of sex, the not vanilla sex, the Neapolitan, if you will, the rocky road, the many Ben and Jerry's pun flavors of what people do to experience pleasure and exacerbate that. Psychology is where you go. Because if you think about it, that's how it's been framed in society this whole time.
Oh, absolutely. Or if you're like me and you kind of look at it from the other side, it was like, philosophy.
Yeah, philosophy is a good way to look at it too.
Yeah.
And so
psychology,
and also because I like to help people, I like to ask a lot of questions and all that, and so it seemed like a good fit. Turns out, Purdue is not a good psych school if you want to do that. It's good for research.
Okay. I have a parent that went to Purdue, so.
And so did I, and so did my dad.
Oh, there you go.
And so my grandparents, all that. But it just, I took that psych degree and I was extremely underfulfilled. I did a lot of casework, a lot of psych work, and then I was like, I'm not happy because I feel fulfillment from helping people who need help, but I'm not getting what I want out of it.
Okay.
And so I went back to grad school. I was like, I want to learn more about sex. So there's got to be programs that talk about sex.
Yeah, I bet there are.
And there are not a lot.
Oh. Okay.
Because there's a lot of gender and sexuality programs, a lot of women's studies, and a lot of different schools, but like, if you want to learn about sex and about like how people do that, and if you want to be like an educator for it, there's like 5 schools that are really good for it. There is Widener University. It's a private university in South Philly. I got accepted into that one. I said no because there's also like the Kinsey Institute and like IU. That's where I'm going now.
Oh, nice.
There's a school in Australia.
Oh.
And then I applied to the University of Amsterdam because you got to have one.
Right, the backup.
There's no way they'll say yes. And then they said yes.
Oh.
And then I was like, do I go to South Philly or do I go to Amsterdam? The choice was made. It was very simple. And so I went for that. And it's a sociology degree.
Oh, okay.
But I learned a lot about what I needed to know about.
Right.
Because, with psych, you get one very specific framing, and that is, let's look at the psychosis. Let's look at, how people are dysfunctional with sexuality that isn't reproductive. And then I went to sociology where they say, hey, so let's give you a lot of history. Let's talk about Freud for a minute.
Oh.
Yeah, let's talk about the Enlightenment. Let's talk about a bunch of feminist scholars and epistemology. We talked about a lot about philosophy.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Yeah, and it gave me everything I needed to do everything else. And so they're like, you need to write a thesis. And I'm like, that makes sense.
Uh-huh.
They're like, it's got to be about gender or sexuality. And I'm like, I want to talk about sex. I want to talk about the sex I've been wanting to talk about for a long time. And they're like, so how are you going to do it in sociology? I'm like, because it's like, you can't just explore why.
Right.
Why is not a good question. Because there's no answer. We will never get that answer. And so, yeah, the impetus was these questions. I've been talking about it for a decade at this point, and finally it's just like, you finally have the tools in your disposal to ask not why, but more how. You have you can ask people, well, you learned about stigma. You learned about stigma outside of just kind of like that guy has a weird face, and so people don't like talking to him. Right. You talk about hidden stigma. You can talk about, passive stigma. You can talk about, how people balance their online lives and their offline lives, because we talk about sex workers. We talk about, it's in the sociology. We talk about immigration. We talk about managing how society perceives you and how you manage how you perceive you when your whole life you've been told that you're weird, or because you have that shame, and then how did you overcome that shame? You got into the work because it was a way to make money, but how did you stay in the work? That's
That's
the
it.
paper.
Nice. That's cool.
It was a long way of saying, because I was curious, and it was a very interesting way to look at it. But yeah, that's why I did it.
Nice. That's very cool.
I feel bad because in the paper I do not explicitly state that I'm into it.
Okay.
Because hilariously, those who are aware of stigma are also subject to stigma.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm telling my coworkers, oh yeah, I'm going to New Jersey for the weekend. For what? Oh, I'm going to a conference. I'm going to talk about my thesis. Like, cool. And they just don't ask any more questions, and I'm okay with that.
I don't know, though. I've never written a thesis, but I do feel that sometimes there's no quicker way to be like, let's shut down a confirmation and be like, let's talk about my thesis. Like,
Turns out, yeah, you got to be in the right crowd.
Yeah.
Because there's other people who are like, oh, I'm working on my thesis. I'm like, oh, yeah, what are you working on? They're like, cool. And I'm like, oh, I did this. And they're like, really?
Oh,
Okay.
more.
Yeah. And it's like, what'd you write about? I wrote about people who make fetish content on the internet. Oh, like BDSM stuff? No, other stuff. You probably never heard of it.
Dig
It's
deeper.
okay. Yeah. They don't experience a lot of stigma. Why? Because you've never heard of it. So how do you antagonize someone you don't know about?
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it's my favorite example is, have you ever heard of fried Pepsi?
That sounds familiar, but I don't know if I could put my finger on.
It's a
off the
state
top of my
fair
head.
food.
Oh, like a fried Oreo or a fried.
Yeah. So they deep fry Pepsi.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
like, you would not know to have an opinion on it until I told you it existed.
Nope.
Exactly.
Yep.
I'll tell you the opinion. Bad.
Okay.
It's very bad. It's not good at all. But,
Good to
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Cool.
Do you have any other questions?
I don't think I do at this time. I think
Wonderful.
that's pretty wonderful.
No, not wonderful for that, but wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
Thank God you're done talking to me.
Oh my god, I've got
Oh,
a
this guy's so weird. So,
I just wipe up the makeup like this is dumb.
I did not give him my real name, thank God.
Oh, but yes, but thank you for sharing. I really
Absolutely.
appreciate it.
Thank you
Glad
very
I got
much.
to meet you
Thanks
this
for wanting to
weekend.
talk.
It was a lot of fun.
Well, all right.
Now I get to figure out if I want to do more of these or if I want to like do something else. Because there's so many other people here that I didn't get to talk to. For
Right.
this.
Yeah.
Turns out like a good number of people here I didn't get to, and they're like, I saw your email, and I was just like, I got busy, I lost it, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, there's time now. I don't have to fly out till 6.
Mm.
Yeah, it's like,
But,
yeah.
the,
Thank you so much.
absolutely.
Yeah, we gotta kill this.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for sticking around, and after the year it has been, I really appreciate you still being. It's been difficult for everyone, so it's good for you to be here.
And I'm glad we are. So, good night, everybody.
Good night.
Okay. And clicky clicky. Stoppy stoppy.